The party of former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe is vowing to finish his work days after Abe was shot dead at a campaign event. The Liberal Democratic Party and its junior coalition partner secured a majority in the parliament's upper house in Sunday's elections. The result means Abe's successor, Prime Minister Fumio Kishida, could rule uninterrupted until a scheduled vote in 2025. It also allows him to work on Mr. Abe's unfinished goals, including strengthening the military and even revising the country's pacifist constitution. Joining us to unpack the election, Mr. Abe's legacy, and what it all means for Japan and the greater region is Jonathan Berkshire Miller, Director and Senior Fellow of the Indo-Pacific Program at the Macdonald-Laurier Institute. He is also a Senior Fellow with the Japan Institute of International Affairs. Mr. Miller, welcome back to Forum Daily.
Thanks. It's a pleasure to be on.
Let us start with the assassination of former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. What has been the impact in Japan?
Well, I think Japan, as much of the world, has been deeply shocked by this incident. First of all, political violence like this is a rarity in Japan. Gun violence itself, actually, is a rarity in Japan. And not only this, but I think Abe himself was a giant on the international stage and a giant in Japan. Not everyone necessarily agreed with his policies, but he was Japan's longest-serving modern-day prime minister. And I think his death really was a bit of a political earthquake to many in Japan.
What is the significance of Mr. Abe's legacy, both in Japan and the Indo-Pacific region?
I think Abe's death and his legacy and his life, I think, will be felt quite a bit in this part of the world. Frankly, Abe was a strong leader in a period where there wasn't much leadership. You look around the G7 even now, obviously we've seen what's happened in the UK with Boris Johnson's removal. There really isn't much leadership right now in the G7. There isn't much leadership in the G20. We see authoritarians on the march, whether it's in China or Russia. Abe, during his time, was a strong leader. He stood up for the international rules-based order. He promoted free trade and strong international institutions that could be resilient against these authoritarian threats. And I think that's going to be a legacy that he leaves.
Fumio Kishida, Japan's PM, has seen his majority increase in the upper house. How do you expect this to impact government policies moving forward?
So I think Kishida predictably was able to get a strong majority now. The Liberal Democratic Party, which he leads, continues to be a stalwart in Japanese politics. I think we can see consistency rather than any sort of disruption in Japanese politics. Japan will continue to be a strong voice for ensuring a strong rules-based order in this part of the world. Although I do worry the fact that Kishida is a strong leader. He's following many of the policies of Abe, but he doesn't necessarily yet have that stature that Abe had. So whether he can sort of fulfill that in his coming years is an open question.
So what are the main strategic issues for Japan in the Indo-Pacific region?
I think Japan, frankly, lives in a bit of a challenging part of the world. Obviously, its neighborhood, it has the relationship with China, territorial disputes with China. It also has an increasingly fractious relationship with Russia to its north, which it also has a territorial dispute with, in addition to the challenges of North Korea and its continued advancement of its nuclear and ballistic missile weapons program. So Japan has a host of different challenges, and frankly, its economy is very much reliant on the interdependency of these economies. So any challenge, whether it's over Taiwan, whether it's over North Korea, directly will impact Japanese security and its economy.
We know the Quad is important to Japan's security. How is this alliance important to the Indo-Pacific region and Canada's strategic interests in the region?
Well, I think the Quad is a recognition that while multilateralism has some impact and some effect, that it's maybe a necessary but insufficient way to deal with some of the challenges in this region. Frankly, the United Nations is not going to resolve some of the challenges that we face, especially in this part of the world. And the Quad is an outgrowth of that. I think the Quad, being Japan, India, Australia, and the United States, have aligned together, not necessarily to contain China, but to stand up for what they think is right in this region. And what is right is often shared interest, shared values of democracy, and a shared sense of the rule of law being primacy, having a prime element in international affairs.
Well, thank you so much for your time.